chosen one. It didn't feel like anything was happening, but something has been shifting quietly. You felt that silence longer than you were supposed to. Not just days, not just months, but a stretch of time where nothing answered you back the way you expected. Where every sign you thought would come didn't. Where every confirmation stayed just out of reach, and you started adjusting to it. Not fully giving up, but slowly lowering the volume of your expectations. Telling yourself maybe this is just how it is now. Maybe the silence is the answer. But something about it never sat right with you. Because deep down, it didn't feel empty. It felt held. Like something was being paused, not denied. And you couldn't explain why. There were moments you remember them. Small, almost forgettable shifts. A sudden thought that didn't feel like yours. A delay that didn't make sense at the time. A door that closed too precisely to be random. It didn't seem important then, but it was. Because those weren't signs of absence. They were signs of control. But that wasn't the full picture. What you interpreted as silence wasn't silence in the way you thought. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't distance. It was timing being rewritten around you. You thought nothing was happening, but things were being rearranged in places you couldn't see. Conversations you weren't part of. Outcomes shifting before they could reach you. Paths closing before you could walk into something that wasn't meant to hold you. And because you didn't see it, you called it silence. But now, something feels different. Subtle, not loud, not overwhelming, just undeniable. The same stillness is there, but it doesn't feel the same anymore. There's movement inside it now. A quiet pressure, like something that held back for too long, is no longer holding itself the same way. You're starting to notice it in the smallest ways. Things aligning without effort, delays shortening, energy shifting without explanation. And it's confusing, because nothing external has fully changed yet. But internally, you know, this isn't the same phase anymore. You're not in the waiting the way you were before. Because what felt like a long, unanswered stretch was never empty time. It was controlled distance, measured silence, intentional stillness. You thought it meant one thing, it didn't. It meant preparation. Not for something far away, but for something that was always meant to meet you at the exact moment you stopped forcing it. And that moment? It's closer than it's ever been. That shift you're feeling right now, that quiet difference you can't fully explain, it didn't begin here. But now, you can't ignore it. There was a time when the silence made you question everything, but now it feels different. Comment, I stayed through the silence if you feel this shift too. If this is speaking to you, stay connected with Born into Light and don't miss what's unfolding next. Because the silence isn't sitting the same way inside you anymore. It's not heavy, it's focused. Like it's pointing somewhere instead of just surrounding you. And that changes everything, even if nothing outside has caught up yet. You're starting to notice how certain things no longer reach you the way they used to. Not because they disappeared, but because you've been moved slightly out of their path. Just enough. Just quietly enough that you almost questioned it. But then something else happened. Something small, but too precise to overlook. A moment that lined up a little too perfectly. And for a second you felt it, that strange recognition, like you were stepping into something that had already been decided. Not forced, not rushed, just timed. And that's where it shifts. Because the silence you thought you were enduring was actually protecting the timing you weren't ready to hold yet, not delaying you, containing you. There's a difference, a big one, because delay feels like distance. But containment feels like pressure building in one place for a reason, and you've been inside that pressure longer than you realize. That's why it felt uncomfortable. That's why it felt uncomfortable. Because you were never meant to stay there, only to be shaped there. And now, something about that pressure is changing. It's not holding the same way, it's loosening, but not randomly, strategically. You might not see it fully yet, but you can feel the edges shifting, like something that was once tightly sealed is starting to open, just enough to let something through. Not everything, just enough. And here's the part you didn't expect. The silence didn't end. It transformed. It stopped being something you were waiting through and became something you're now moving with. That's why it feels different. That's why you're not reacting the same way. Because without realizing it, you've already adjusted to a rhythm that wasn't visible before. And now that rhythm is starting to respond back. Slowly, deliberately. Almost like it's checking if you notice. And you do, even if you can't explain how. Even if part of you is still trying to catch up. Because something is aligning in a way that doesn't need your effort anymore. It only needs your awareness. That's it. Not more trying, not more questioning. Just seeing. Because the moment you fully see it, everything that felt silent won't feel silent anymore. Because what you thought was absence was actually communication in a form you weren't used to reading yet. Not louder, just deeper. And now you're starting to pick up on it. In the pauses, in the things that don't happen, in the moments where something almost begins, then gently redirects. That used to frustrate you. Now it makes you stop, just for a second, because there's a pattern there, not obvious but consistent, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. But here's where it shifts again. You expected clarity to arrive all at once, a clear sign, a defined answer, something you could point to and say, this is it. But that's not how it's unfolding. It's coming in fragments, pieces that only make sense when you feel them, not when you analyze them. Which is why part of you keeps hesitating, because it doesn't look like what you were taught to trust, but it feels like something you've always known. And that contradiction, that's not confusion, that's alignment happening outside your usual way of understanding. You're not being given proof, you're being given recognition. There's a difference. One convinces you, the other reminds you. And what's happening now isn't trying to convince you of anything. It's waiting to see if you recognize it. Because the moment you do, something opens, not externally, internally. A shift that doesn't announce itself, but changes how everything lands. You won't react the same. You won't chase the same. You won't question the same. And that's when the silence fully breaks. Not because it disappears, but because you finally understand what it was saying. And here's the part that changes the weight of all of this. It was never about when it would speak. It was about when you would hear it. And that moment is not ahead of you anymore. It's right here, closer than it first appears, closer than you expected, which is why something inside you feels like it's leaning forward now, without knowing why. Like you're standing at the edge of something that hasn't fully revealed itself yet, but you can feel it pulling you anyway. Not strongly, not forcefully, just enough. And that's how you know this time is different, because you're not trying to reach it. It's starting to reach you, not in a way you can hold, but in a way you can't ignore anymore. You feel it in the timing, in how certain things arrive just before you question them, or disappear right before you attach meaning to them. That's not random, it never was. But you needed to see it this way first, slowly, piece by piece, because if it came all at once, you would have tried to control it. And this was never meant to be controlled, only recognized. That's why the silence had to stay as long as it did. Not to test you, that's what you thought. But it wasn't a test, it was a reset, a quiet undoing of the way you used to interpret everything. Because back then, you were looking for confirmation outside of yourself. Clear signs, defined answers. Something you could hold on to and say, now I know. But now you're starting to notice something different. You know, before you can explain why. And that changes how everything moves around you. Subtly, almost invisibly, but consistently. And here's where it deepens. The things you once waited for are no longer being sent the same way. Not because they stopped coming, but because you no longer need them in that form. That's the part that feels unfamiliar. Because it doesn't match your past. It doesn't follow the pattern you memorized. It breaks it. Quietly. Completely. And you didn't see that coming. You thought the change would feel obvious. Noticeable. maybe even overwhelming, but instead it feels precise, like something adjusting itself exactly where it needs to, nothing extra, nothing forced, just exact. And that's when it becomes clear, not loudly but unmistakably, that what was being prepared wasn't just around you, it was within you. That's why the silence couldn't be rushed, because it wasn't waiting on something external to arrive. It was waiting for something internal to align. And now it has. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough for the shift to begin. Enough for the movement to no longer stay hidden. Enough for you to feel the difference without needing proof. And here's the part that might catch you off guard. This next phase won't feel like waiting at all. It will feel like things are already in motion, even before you see where they're going, which means you won't have time to question it the same way. You won't sit in it like before, you'll move with it, naturally, almost instinctively. And that's how you'll know this wasn't just a change in timing, it was a change in you, something subtle, but permanent. Because now, when it reaches you, you won't hesitate the way you used to, you'll recognize it the way you used to. And this time, you'll respond. Not after overthinking it, not after waiting for it to make perfect sense, but in the moment it meets you. That's new. Because before, you needed distance, time to process, time to question, time to make sure you weren't imagining it. But now, there's a quiet certainty forming underneath everything. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself. It just stays. And the more you notice it, the less you feel the need to doubt it. That's the shift, subtle but irreversible, because something inside you has already decided, even if you haven't fully caught up to that decision yet. And that's where it gets deeper. You're not preparing anymore. You've already been prepared. That's why certain reactions don't rise in you the same way. That's why things that used to pull you don't have the same grip. You didn't force that change. It happened quietly, during the silence. But here's the part that turns everything. You thought the silence was shaping you for something ahead. It wasn't. It was aligning you with something that had already been set in motion, before you even recognized it, before you even felt ready. And that means you're not stepping into something new, you're stepping into something that's been waiting for you to match it. That's why the timing feels so precise now, almost too precise. Like moments are no longer spaced randomly, they're placed carefully, intentionally. And you're walking through them one by one, not realizing how closely they've been arranged around you, until now. Because now, you're starting to see the sequence. Not fully, just enough to feel it. And once you feel it, you begin to move differently. Less hesitation, less resistance, more awareness. More trust in something you can't fully explain yet. And that's when the final layer begins to shift. Not outside, inside. Where you no longer wait to be shown, you start recognizing before it's revealed. Which changes everything again. Because now, the distance between signal and response disappears. And in that space, something becomes clear. Not as a thought, but as a knowing you can't undo. That what's reaching you has always known exactly where you are, and it never lost track. Not once, even when you thought it did, even when it felt completely still. That stillness was never disconnection. It was accuracy. And now you're standing in it, not searching, not guessing, just aware. And something about this moment, the way it feels, the way it's settling inside you, it's not asking for your permission anymore, it's waiting for your agreement, quietly, patiently, but not for long. Because what comes next won't arrive the way it used to, and when it does, you won't need to question it. You'll know this is what the silence was leading you into. But not in the way you imagined, not as a moment you could point to and say, this is it. It's quieter than that, closer than that, already unfolding without announcing itself. And that's why it almost slips past you. Almost. Because a part of you still expects something louder, something obvious. But what's happening now doesn't need to be loud, it needs to be precise, and precision doesn't rush. It lands exactly where it's meant to, exactly when you're able to receive it without distorting it. That's the part you didn't see before. You thought readiness meant effort. It doesn't. It means alignment. And alignment doesn't feel like pushing forward. It feels like something finally clicking into place, internally, without force, without noise. Just a shift, small enough to miss if you're not paying attention, but strong enough to change everything if you are. And you are, even if you haven't admitted it yet, because something in you has already started adjusting. You're noticing what you used to overlook, feeling what you used to dismiss, pausing where you used to rush. That's not random. That's response. A quiet one, but real. And here's where it deepens again. What's coming toward you isn't trying to get your attention the way things used to. It's not chasing you. It's not calling out loudly. It's waiting for you to meet it halfway. But here's the contradiction. You won't move toward it the way you think. You won't chase it. You won't go searching for it. You'll recognize it, and that recognition will be the movement. That's new, because movement without action doesn't make sense to the version of you that existed before this silence. But to who you are now, it's the only way this could unfold, and that's why everything had to slow down first. Because speed would have made you miss it, and missing it was never an option, not this time. That's why things were held back, not from you. For you, there's a difference, a sharp one, because being denied creates distance, but being preserved creates timing. And now, that timing is no longer waiting. It's approaching, closer than it's ever been. You can feel it in the way your focus shifts without effort, in the way certain thoughts don't linger anymore, in the way something inside you keeps leaning forward, even when nothing outside has fully changed yet. That leaning, it's not curiosity, it's recognition starting before the reveal. And that means one thing. You're about to see what you've been feeling. Not all at once, not all at once, but enough to confirm what your silence has been telling you all along. And when that moment lands, it won't shock you. That's the unexpected part. It will feel familiar, like something you've already touched, just not in this form, which means you won't question it the way you used to. You won't step back. You won't hesitate. You'll step into it as if you've been there before. Because in a way you have, just not consciously, not until now. And that's why this moment matters more than it seems. Because it's not introducing something new. It's revealing what's been quietly aligning itself to you this entire time. And now it's close enough to be seen, even if only partially, even if only for a second. But that's all it takes. One clear moment, and everything that felt uncertain won't feel the same again. Because once you see it, even for a moment, you won't be able to return to the version of yourself that kept questioning everything. That version depended on uncertainty. This one doesn't. Not because everything is suddenly clear, but because something inside you has already crossed a line you didn't notice before. A quiet line, invisible but final. And now, you're standing on the other side of it. That's why things feel slightly off, but in a way that feels right. Like your reactions are no longer matching your old patterns. You pause where you used to panic. You observe where you used to assume. You move, but only when it aligns. That's not hesitation, it's calibration, and it's happening in real time. But here's the part that might surprise you. This shift didn't happen when things started changing. It happened before that. Before anything external even moved. Which means what you're about to experience isn't the beginning. It's the confirmation. And confirmation doesn't arrive loudly, it arrives precisely, in a way that feels almost too natural, almost like it was always supposed to happen this way. That's why you won't react with shock. You'll react with recognition, a quiet, steady knowing that settles in your chest without asking for proof. And once that happens, something else begins, not outside, inside, a different kind of clarity. One that doesn't answer all your questions, but removes the need to ask them the same way. And that's where everything shifts again, because now you're not waiting to understand what's coming. You're starting to move with it before it fully arrives. That's the part that feels unfamiliar, but also undeniable, because it's not forcing you, it's pulling you, gently, consistently, like something that knows you've reached the point where you won't resist it anymore. And you haven't. Not really. Not in the way you used to. That resistance, it faded quietly, during moments you thought meant nothing. But they did. They meant everything. Because that's where the final adjustments were happening. Subtle, unseen, but exact. And now there's nothing left to delay it. That's the truth you weren't expecting. Not more waiting, not more silence, but movement that was already scheduled to meet you here. Which means the next moment that shifts everything won't look like a turning point. It will look like something small, something easy to overlook, unless you're paying attention the way you are now, because now you don't just notice what's obvious, you notice what's aligned. And that's where it reveals itself. Not all at once, just enough. Just enough for you to feel it lock into place. And when it does, you won't need to ask what it means. You'll feel it, immediately, clearly, without doubt. And in that moment, you'll understand something you couldn't before. This wasn't about waiting for something to arrive. It was about becoming someone who could recognize it the second it did. And that recognition, it doesn't wait for your permission. It happens instantly, before your mind can question it, before doubt even has time to form. That's how you'll know. Because it won't feel like a decision. It will feel like something already decided, being acknowledged. And that's different. Completely different from how it used to be. Before, you needed time. Now, time seems to move after you. Like it's catching up to something you've already aligned with. That's subtle, but it changes everything, because now you're not reacting to life as it unfolds. You're meeting it at the exact point it was meant to reach you. No sooner, no later. And here's the part that deepens it. That moment you're about to recognize it's already closer than you think. Not approaching from a distance, but already within reach. Maybe it even brushed past you once, and you didn't fully catch it. Not because you missed it, but because you weren't meant to hold it yet. But now, that's changing, quietly, without announcement. Because something inside you has stabilized, not perfectly, but enough to hold what you couldn't before. And that's why things won't repeat the same way. The old cycles, they don't fit here anymore. Even if they try to appear familiar, they won't land the same. You'll feel the difference immediately. That slight disconnect, that quiet awareness that says, this isn't where I stay anymore. And that realization, it won't come with effort. It will come with ease. Which might confuse you for a second, because you're used to clarity feeling intense. But this time, it won't be. It will be calm, certain, almost obvious. And here's the contradiction. The thing you waited so long for won't feel like something you've been waiting for. It will feel like something that's always been yours, finally stepping into view. No struggle, no resistance. Just alignment revealing itself. And in that moment, you won't celebrate it loudly. You won't need to, because something deeper will happen instead. You'll settle into it, naturally, like you've returned to a place you never fully left. And that's when it becomes undeniable that the silence never separated you from it. It was keeping you connected in a way you couldn't interrupt. Until now, because now you can't interrupt it even if you tried. That's how precise this is. That's how locked in this moment has become. And you're standing right at the edge of it. Not waiting, not searching, just about to see it fully for the first time. And when you do, it won't feel like something new has entered your life. It will feel like something hidden has finally stopped hiding. And the moment it does, you won't chase it. That's the first sign. You won't feel the urge to grab it, define it, or lock it in place. You'll just stand in it, fully, calmly, like something in you already knows how this fits. And that knowing, it didn't come from this moment. It was built long before it, quietly, layer by layer, during the parts you thought didn't matter. Those pauses, those delays, those moments where nothing seemed to move, they were shaping your ability to recognize this without distorting it. Because before, you would have tried to rush it, to make it clearer, to make it yours faster. But now, you don't need to, and that's where the real shift is, not in what's arriving, but in how you're receiving it. Because you're not reaching out anymore. You're allowing it to land, exactly as it is, and that changes how it stays. Because things that are forced fade, but things that are aligned anchor. And this is anchoring, slowly, deeply, without needing your effort. But here's where it turns again. You thought recognition would give you answers. It doesn't. It gives you direction, a quiet pull, a sense of where to step without being told how. And that can feel unfamiliar, because there's no map, no clear explanation, just a knowing that keeps pointing you forward. And forward doesn't look the way it used to. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's subtle, precise. Almost like each next step only reveals itself after you take the one before it. And that's intentional, because now you're not meant to see the whole path. You're meant to trust the sequence. But here's the unexpected part. You already are. Even if you haven't said it out loud, even if part of you is still catching up, because your actions, they've started to shift ahead of your thoughts. You move, then understand. You feel, then realize. That order used to be reversed, not anymore. And that's how you know this is real. Because it's not asking for your belief, it's showing you your alignment through how naturally you're stepping into it. And the more you do, the clearer it becomes. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to remove the old uncertainty. Enough to make hesitation feel out of place. Enough to show you this isn't something forming, it's something revealing. And it's been revealing longer than you realized, which means what you're experiencing now is only the part you can finally see. And if this is what's visible, then what's just beyond it, the part you're about to step into, it's already aligned in ways you haven't fully grasped yet. But you're close, closer than you've ever been, not to understanding everything, but to recognizing what matters. And that recognition, it's about to deepen again, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way that makes everything you felt until now start making a different kind of sense. A quieter one, a sharper one, the kind that doesn't explain itself but doesn't need to anymore. Because now you're not trying to figure it out, you're starting to live inside it, and living inside it feels nothing like what you expected. It's quieter, more exact, almost weightless. Not because nothing matters, but because you're no longer carrying what never belonged to you. That's the shift you didn't notice at first. The release didn't feel like losing something. It felt like space, subtle, but undeniable. And in that space, something else has been forming, not loudly, not urgently, just steadily, like it's been waiting for room to exist without interference. And now it has it. That's why everything feels more precise. Your attention, your responses, even your pauses, they're not random anymore. They're aligned with something you're only beginning to recognize. And here's the part that pulls everything together. What's unfolding now was never meant to overwhelm you. That's why it arrives in pieces. That's why it reveals itself in moments that almost feel ordinary. Because if you weren't paying attention, you'd call it coincidence. But you're past that now. You don't dismiss it the same way. You feel it before you label it. And that feeling, it's guiding you more accurately than anything you used to rely on. Which means you're no longer waiting for confirmation. You're becoming it, quietly, naturally, without needing to announce it. And that's where the final shift begins, not in what you see, but in what you no longer question. Because the doubt that once followed you, it doesn't land the same anymore. It tries, but it doesn't stay. That's how you know something fundamental has changed. Not temporarily, not emotionally, but structurally. And once that changes, everything else has to follow, not forcefully, not all at once, but inevitably. And here's the truth that was hidden inside all of this. Nothing was ever late. Nothing was ever Nate. Nothing was ever truly silent. It was all positioned, held exactly where it needed to be, until you reached the point where you wouldn't misread it anymore. And now, you're here. Not at the end, not at a conclusion, but at a point of recognition so clear, it doesn't need to explain itself. You feel it in how still everything is, yet how much is moving beneath that stillness. You feel it in how nothing seems rushed, yet everything feels close. Closer than it's ever been. And that closeness, it's not something you chase. It's something you allow, because now you trust what's arriving without needing to see all of it first. You trust the sequence, you trust the timing, you trust yourself inside it. And that's what the silence was building toward all along. Not an answer, not a moment, but a version of you that wouldn't need either to know. And now that version is here, quiet, aware, ready in a way that doesn't need to prove it. And as everything continues to unfold from here, you won't feel like you're stepping into something unknown. You'll feel like you're finally walking into something that always knew you were coming. And now, it's no longer waiting, it's meeting you. This wasn't the end of your waiting, it was the beginning of your recognition. Subscribe now, because what's coming is meant for the version of you that stayed chosen one. This is where your next chapter truly begins.